So mesenchymal cells. So mesenchyme is a pretty complex topic, but what you should know is that mesenchyme is some sort of embryonic tissue, so it forms early in your development in the womb. So the thing is that mesenchyme is a special type of cell we call stem cells. Now, what are stem cells? Well, one characteristic, actually stem cells have we'll get to it at the end of this lecture, but stem cells, one of the most powerful things, and this is why a lot of researchers are looking at stem cells, is that stem cells can actually develop into other types of specialized cells, like osteocytes that are bone, chondrocytes like in cartilage, muscle cells, fibroblasts, and other types of cells as well. So mesenchymal cells, they're loosely connected and they can also migrate. So they're not just important in building new tissues, but they're also very important in repairing new tissues because they're able to travel to repair sites and regenerate tissues as well. So this is why stem cells are a very, very hot topic in science. Well, even before COVID, but yeah, there's still a lot of people doing researching stem cells. And again, are we just a mass of all the same cells? I mean, our nuclei are the same, but if you look at individual cells, are the retinal cells in our eye the same as our muscle cells, as our skin cells, as our bone cells and reproductive cells? No, we have different types of cells, right? So how do we go from this cell, just one cell, and somehow have all these specialized cells? Well, this is why we have to talk about stem cells. So there are two main properties of stem cells, and there are different types of stem cells, but they all have these two properties. So stem cells, they can, as previously mentioned with mesenchymal cells, they can actually develop into other types of specialized cells. And stem cells can regenerate and generate more stem cells. So these are two different processes we call, well, this part right here, when you start to have a stem cell and it's starting to develop and become different, it's the process we call differentiation. So you might have seen that term pluripotent exam or like the quiz 3. This is what we're talking about. Now, do I want you to know the difference between totipotent, pluripotent, multipotent, unipotent? I think that's more of a PHYL 301, 302 advanced A&P topic. But what's happening here is that you go from the stem cell that doesn't quite have a specialty yet, but it can develop into all these different types of cells in the body. And again, your neuron is not the same as your brain cells aren't the same as your skin cells, nor are the same as your muscle cell, heart muscle cells, or lung cells. So what I like to think of it this way. So if you don't have a major, if you're exploratory, I think they're calling it, they don't call it undeclared anymore. But totipotent embryonic stem cells, they kind of are like cells, or maybe you can think of them as very young, like high school students who haven't chosen a major yet. But what happens as they go through their school and career is that they start to become more specialized. Maybe this is somebody in like the education department, and then they become a secondary school teacher, or they become a special ed teacher or a kindergarten teacher. So as they become more mature and develop more and more into their specialty, they become more specialized. Now, at this point, it's very hard for these cells to change jobs. Just like, I mean, you can change majors, but if you know people who are pretty established in the career, it's very unlikely somebody is going to go from a farmer. I mean, maybe it's possible, but how many farmers all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to be a lawyer these days? Or how many people are, say, like mathematicians and like, I'm going to join Cirque du Soleil and do all these flippy acrobatic tricks. So differentiation is kind of like choosing a major, then choosing a profession. So these cells become more and more specialized. Now, stem cells can undergo differentiation and become specialized. This is differentiation. And how do they do that? Well, the thing is that you have many genes in the nucleus in your cells, and for all cells that have a nucleus, well, let's actually, do I want to talk about immune cells? No, don't worry about that. So at this point, all the cells that your stem cells will have the same nuclear DNA and genome, but they all have the same genes, but they don't actually turn on all the genes at once. So it's kind of like choosing the courses you want to do for your major. Like if you're a KRS major, are you going to take a whole bunch of art and business classes? I mean, you can, but you're probably going to choose the classes that are most important to your major as well, right? Same with things like, is a business major going to take a lot of A&P and hard sciences and chemistry and calculus? Probably not if they're just aiming for a degree in their major. So this is kind of like the cells. The stem cells are choosing genes like somebody in a major chooses their classes. You have all these classes available, you're all in the same university, but you're choosing a certain set of classes to choose a specialized function and career. So fully differentiated cells cannot easily become stem cells. So this is like switching careers and major. This would take basically turning off a bunch of genes, choosing new genes. So kind of like choosing the switching majors. You have to also add more classes that you didn't have originally. So this is why it's very hard for cells to say, hey, all of a sudden I want to become this type of cell. And the thing is that fully differentiated cells, they lose their ability to divide. So they're kind of like people who are very further along their career. We lose our ability, I mean, everyone loses their natural ability to reproduce over time. Same with stem cells. As they become older and more differentiated, they start to lose their ability to undergo mitosis. So how do you regenerate more differentiated cells? So if you have a neuron right here, and a neuron can't divide to make more neurons, or actually most neurons, there are some exceptions. How do you generate more of these differentiated cells? Well, the thing is that this is the second part. So the first feature here, where they can choose it and to develop into different types of cells, that's differentiation. Now the second part is that stem cells can regenerate and produce more stem cells. So here I have a stem cell undergoing differentiation. But again, remember that when these differentiate, they lose their ability to divide. So how do you get more blood cells? How do you get more muscle cells? How do you get more neurons? Well, what you can do is divide this original stem cell and generate more stem cells. So now you have 4 stem cells in this example, and this one can go off and differentiate. But these stem cells, they can either generate more of these cells or they can generate more stem cells. So this second process is what we call a regeneration, or sometimes we call it self-renewal. So these are two main properties of stem cells, differentiation and regeneration. So this is how, even though cells, when they become specialized, they lose ability to undergo mitosis and cell division, the stem cells are very important in regenerating more stem cells, so you're able to replenish your cell stocks of these. How do stem cells choose which genes to turn on? So this is where it could be a deep dive. It's something called transcriptional regulation. But it's not a molecular biology class. I would love to talk about it because I did my dissertation on that. But yeah, so then don't worry about that part. So how their promoters and transcriptional activation and downregulation or repression, that is something beyond the scope of this class. Important stuff, but if you really want to know, if you're really curious, you can then find out about that. And stem cells in the body, so you can find stem cells pretty much almost everywhere in the body, but some organs and tissues in your body don't have too many stem cells. So things like your heart. Your heart has a hard time regenerating itself, but things like your skin is full of stem cells because you're always shedding a lot of like the outer layers of your skin. So you would have a lot of stem cells that are able to regenerate at the different types of cells in your skin. So yeah, there are stem cells practically everywhere, but in different amounts depending on the tissue and organ. So this is the main thing I want you to get from mesenchymal cells. Don't worry about, okay, what are all the types of cells that mesenchymal cells can develop into? Maybe that's more appropriate for embryology or developmental biology class. But at this level, you should know that there's stem cells, and stem cells, this is the wave of the future. Because why? They can regenerate and regenerate lost tissue and dead cells. So that's why, yeah, very important. Does mitosis only happen with stem cells then? So the thing is that there are cells that can divide, but they don't necessarily differentiate into other types of cells. So mitosis isn't exclusive to mesenchymal cells and stem cells. Just so that happens that being able to regenerate is a feature of stem cells. So again, it's like mitosis isn't exclusive to just stem cells.